right, so thank you all for joining us tonight. Welcome. My name is Maria Emanuel. I'm the Associate Director of UNHInnovation, and we're delighted to have you join us for the third seminar of our seminar series this year. And our theme, in case you're just joining us, is a conversation about, and we are inviting New Hampshire businesses or regional businesses to come and talk to us about their industry areas and challenges and innovations and problems that they come across. And we're partnering those conversations with members of the UNH community and the research that they're conducting and trends that they see in that area, with the idea of bringing together these two viewpoints and think about how that information gets exchanged and the types of conversations it can lead to. We're very pleased to have you join us. Now, in saying that, our theme next month is celebration and networking. So we will not have any speakers, but we'll invite you, and you'll see an invitation go out, and so we'll be inviting you to come and just join us for an evening of networking and hors d'oeuvres and beverages. And it's always a very nice event. If you haven't joined us before, please do so. It's a nice turnout, and it's a really good way to continue to connect with this engaged community to talk about entrepreneurship, innovation, and creativity. So before I introduce our speakers tonight, I wanted to say a thank you to our generous sponsors for our seminar series. We have Upton & Hatfield, which is a law firm with offices in Concord, Hillsborough, and Portsmouth, providing legal services to the people, businesses, and municipalities of New Hampshire. And we also have Finch & Maloney, which is a Manchester-based law firm that provides IP counseling and services to technology companies. We're always very appreciative of their support. Some housekeeping items. We're going to have our presentation first, and afterwards we'll have a chance to continue that conversation with networking, so we hope that you can stay and enjoy more beverages, which, if you're not over 21, please stick the bottles of water. If you're over than 21, then we have more selections for you. So beverages and hors d'oeuvres. I think that's probably everything. So today's topic, as you probably know, is data analytics, and we're really thrilled for our team of speakers tonight. First, we have Bob McGrath, and Dr. McGrath is an Everett B. Sackett Associate Professor and Director for Graduate Programs of Analytics at the University of New Hampshire. He's a member of the Department of Health Management and Policy, which is in our College of Health and Human Services. And his academic focus is around health data and information issues for healthcare practice and policy. And then following Bob, we're going to hear from Peter Mueller. And Peter is the Business Analytics Global Program Manager for Lonza PharmaBiotech. Come on in, everyone. There's plenty of seats. And Peter joined Lonza about 4 years ago, and he's charged with creating and deploying a business analytics global center of excellence and global program team with associated processes, methods, and tools. So for today's session, Bob's going to get us started. He's going to talk about the size and concept, the scope of data, things that you might see and what's going on out there. And then Peter's going to follow that and talk about how a large company will use this type of information to look at their business and their practices and to be able to think about improvements and provide information to aid the teams within the company. So at the end, we're going to make sure that we leave time for a Q&A as you hear things that spark your interest or as you think about these ideas together. If you have questions along the way, you're also invited to ask them, but do know that we'll have a devoted time at the end for Q&A. And then, of course, if it spills over into networking, we'll continue the conversation there. So with that, I think it's time to get started. We'll start with you.
Great, thanks, Maria. So I'm Bob McGrath. I love it. My students have to sit in front. These are my masters. So if you're looking for analytic help, these guys looking for jobs to come in a couple of months. I'm just here to really tee up Peter. So my job is really to set the stage. And I don't know how many of you, where you're coming from and how much you've been in this space. If you were at the last Catalyst seminar, you heard a lot about some of the sensor technology. So I'll probably cover that again a little bit. But I think it's always good when I talk to audiences really to start with where are we now? Because the where are we now is a really important question because it's not where we were even yesterday or the year before. And just to get our head around what's next, we really have to understand the trends that are going on in the world of data. So I'm going to just lay that groundwork, and then you're all here really to hear what's going on at Lonza, and get out of your way and so you can hear about that. But I think it's important so we all are at least on the same place. So when I speak to groups, and you heard I'm in the healthcare field, we've been dealing with big data a long time in different ways, just like a lot of fields have. And so the question I usually get when I talk is, okay, people come from one of two camps. They say, all right, the machines are about to rule the world and we all should run for cover, or this is just old wine in a new bottle, right? We've done this before. I've been doing big data for a long time, and to some degree, both of those are right, but I think both of them are actually not quite right. And so I always like to start with this quote, because in this case, it rings really true. When people think about the next big thing, they're not thinking big enough, because in our history, most of us, we've lived in a world of incremental change. Change happens incrementally, and it's been getting faster and faster. We're about to live in a world of exponential change. And that's really hard to get your head around, because change is going to happen at such a rate. Actually, our ability to change is going to happen at a rate faster than we can actually change. So it'll be interesting to see the interplay of that given our data. So just to give you a sense of the scope right now, in the world, we have about 3 zettabytes of data. What's a zettabyte? You can see what a zettabyte is. It's a lot. After zettabytes, we're going to have yottabytes. I mean, it's a lot of data. And we're producing more data every year now. I think it's every couple of days we produce more data than what's in the Library of Congress in all of human existence. So, and that's going to grow exponentially. So think about that. How the volume of data, but there's other issues that are going to have to come into play with that. So to give you a sense of some of the things I like to throw up, this is where some of the data that are coming from us, people, that's one source of data, right? And this, up until this year, was the primary source of where data came from. We love our email, we love our Skype, we love our YouTube, we love all that stuff. My kids love their Minecraft, all that stuff, right? So, but we use it a lot, and this is every minute. So tons and tons of data, and it's different than the data we used to have. But that's just us, right? We have new data. So the estimate is by 2020, we'll have about 44 zettabytes. So it's a factor of 10 from where we are today in just a matter of a couple of years. To get a sense of that, so this is Altair 8800 for those of you who are computer geeks. This is one of the first publicly available computers. It was 1973. You could buy the computer, and in 1972 you could buy the computer. In 1973 you could actually buy the motherboard that went with the computer. So I don't know why you'd buy the computer before you got the motherboard, but it was cool to have. And all it did is it had some switches, and the lights went on and off, and you could program it, right? And this in 1970s. Now for some of us that wasn't that long ago. And now we've sort of gone forward into this, and this is a Google server farm that's actually located in Palo Alto. But when we talk about the cloud, that's what we're talking about, right? This is, for a lot of people, when I talk to the audiences, they really think the cloud is up there. It's not. They don't really get the sense that it's really hardware, and that we have these farms all over the world. And the government has a really big one that can handle, I think it can handle almost a yottabyte of data now, but they're massive facilities with big supercomputers and processing power. But as I said, that was just us. This is the new source of data. So this is a sensor. It's a little biologic sensor, and it's on a pill about the size of an aspirin that dissolves in your body. The sensor goes right through. It can tell all kinds of things about you and then goes away. We use these kinds of biodegradable sensors in medicine, agriculture. You can drop them into the soil so that when the combine comes over, they can tell exactly how much nutrients it needs, how much water it needs, what the yield's going to be. And the combines just automatically go over acre by acre, and they can tell these kinds of things. And they have tons of uses, and you've probably heard about that. But this year was the first year where these things generated more data than us things, right? And that's where that's coming from. So here's another example of a wearable sensor, sits on your skin. These are going to be huge in healthcare and in actually wearable fitness and health apps and equipment. So there's a company that's making some wearable shirts, and they started as a company that actually did it for surfers. And you could wear it, and it could tell the body temperature of the surfer in the water, and has tremendous applications in healthcare. Why do we wear gurneys and have these sort of bed pads that can take sensor readings? Why don't we just have the patient wearing the sensor? And they send thousands of points of data a minute that we can then collate and then analyze to predict when, say, a patient adverse event's going to happen. Wouldn't it be nice if the nurse knew 5 minutes before it happened? There's sort of a joke that says, one day in the future, you're going to be sitting around your kitchen, you're going to be making dinner, there'll be a knock at the door, it'll be an ambulance with an EMT, and they'll say, Mr. McGrath, come with us, you're about to have a coronary event. And they're going to be 99% right. So, example in healthcare, this is how we're envisioning it, although we're a little ways away from it, that patient wears the sensor, there's some bridge, it has to have still a computer interface. It goes into some perhaps notification device and maybe out to the nursing desk. But this is still a very technology-intensive process. I mean, there's no magic happening somewhere that data suddenly went from dirty to clean and it's great to use. It's a very manual process. And so where I'm trying to get us to is, what's the role of analytics? And that's a big part of it. So we still need people to really think about how to collate, pull that data from different places, and then make it into a usable form so that we can use it. And here's an example of the agriculture one I was just talking about. So the combines have these visualization tools where they can look at geospatial sort of mapping. They can look at, this is called the seed sensor. They've got all these data points about what's going on in the soil right now, and that allows them to predict a little more accurately. So, and here's an example of a visualization tool. So visualizing data. So when you think about data of that magnitude, you're talking about data really that's flowing at you in real time, right? The new term is data at the edge. And what that means is that it's at the edge of actually happening. So we're getting data not just in batches, and I'll talk about this in a second, we're getting it now. So here's an example of the gold medal match from the Olympics. I don't remember who played that match, but tracking every movement, every ball, every hit, velocity. They now have sensors in soccer balls, so you can monitor practices and you can monitor teams. They have sensors in basketball, so you can look at arcs. And so now it's kind of interesting with, you see the cameras up everywhere, right? But now with wearables and the balls being all censored, you almost don't need that, right? Because you can look at speed, you can look at all those kinds of things and try to predict. And here's one of distracted drivers. There's another one. So all of us carry sensors, right? We have our cell phone, we walk around with them. And that can be really great technology for a lot of reasons as a public health application. So we can tell when people are using their phones when they're actually moving on a roadway, right? That's probably not a good thing to do. Some of you, my favorite sensor application is actually, believe it or not, the Home Depot app. I don't know if you've ever used the Home Depot app. I love the Home Depot app. So when you have the Home Depot app, you walk into Home Depot and inevitably you can never find what you're looking for. So you go to the app and you type it in, and it says, sure, we have 36 of those. Would you like to find them? Hit yes, and up comes a map because it knows you're in that store. It knows where you're standing, and it draws you a little map to where they are. So over the summer, my kids wanted one of these water sprayer misters, right? And so I was in the water sprayer place, and I thought they should be there, and even the person who worked there didn't know. So I finally pulled up the app, and it said, oh yeah, those are at the end of the electrical aisle. There's 26 of them, and sure enough, that's what they were. So it's pretty neat. But they also know where I am, how long I'm standing there, what I'm looking at, and if I have the app and if I'm a loyalty customer, also what I bought, right? So we've gone from the internet of stuff and things that we generate to this thing that you probably, if you were here last time, talked about, the Internet of Things, which is things that generate data. But even that has applications, right? So those are all data generating devices to improve our lives. So really it's the internet of people, because that's what life's about. We need people to both examine the data, to make use of it for some valid purpose that is valuable to us, and ultimately it's everything, right? It's really the internet of everything. So it's just a visualization of real life is what we're sort of moving towards. But I want to talk about the analytic problem. So when we say big data, and everybody hears that term, and a lot of people are sort of tired of it by now, and analytics is another one. What do we really mean? Well, yeah, the volume is really big. There's a lot of it, but that's only 1/3 of the problem because it's really fast, right? So if you have a highway sensor, that's just cars going by or your car, right? It's taking measurements all the time. An average plane trip generates about 1 terabyte of data from coast to coast. One plane, they have 10,000 sensors just around the engines, right? So constantly generating data, it's flooding. So there's a volume problem, but there's also a velocity problem. Our computer systems had to be, changed in order to handle that. And so if you think about the history of computing, and I know a lot of you in this room have done that, we've gone from the Altair 800 to these data warehouses to now we need other solutions. We need these cloud solutions. We need ways to process it. But that's not even the total problem, because the data isn't coming in Excel spreadsheets, right? It's not coming in ones and zeros. It's coming in pictures, and it's coming in YouTube videos, and it's coming in text, and it's coming in all these unstructured forms that traditional data systems, you can't fit that in a table, right? So we had to have more dynamic types of storage and retrieval systems. And so basically what we've created, for those of us who've worked in data in a while, you had sort of the IT, I worked in an insurance company. We had an IT department, and then you had leadership and maybe an analyst in there. And the analyst had to really understand how to pull data out of the warehouse. That doesn't really happen anymore. It does in some places. We have an analytic layer. So we have tools now whose job it is to pull that data into some form that can then be used by the analyst to then inform the business decisions. So that's where analytics has come in. And so what my students here hoping to become. And what the new role out there is this role of a data scientist. So it's a little bit of computer science. It's a little bit of statistics, mathematics. It's a little bit of programming. And it's a little bit of MBA type stuff, because you have to really understand what the nature of the question that's being asked. You have to understand the strategy employed. You have to understand if the question that's being asked is one that can be answered through the data. So you have to be able to program. You have to be able to model. You have to understand the applicability, right? You can build a model to predict anything, but if it's not useful, who cares? Right? So these, right now, these folks are incredibly in demand. Every company wants one. They're not even sure what they are, really. I was just at a conference and everybody wanted one. They weren't really sure why. They want one because, as I was saying to somebody earlier, they're all afraid that they're going to get Ubered next, right? That what's the new business application? Who's going to usurp us that we didn't see coming? And we better look at the data to find out. Well, there's still a lot of learning that has to occur, but they're very in demand and they're very useful people. And so here's sort of the hierarchy of where things exist. You have a technological layer, which is your data storage, architecture, all that kind of stuff. Then your analytic infrastructure, and these both are very computer science still focused. So your computer science folks are not going anywhere. In fact, they're highly in demand. But understand this, and these layers are changing radically too. Hadoop and Clutter, you may or may not have heard those terms. Hadoop is basically an open source system that allows for handling of unstructured data. So you can do analytics, and then now there's Apache analytics that you can do some real-time stuff with. Then you get these folks. They get the data in massive forms, terabytes, petabytes, whatever it is, and they try to make sense of it. So probably, most of my healthcare consulting career, I would hear, I've got a ton of data and I can't make a decision, right? Or I know we collect that, but why can't we do something about it? Why isn't there somebody who can help us make a decision? That's what these folks are really there for. And then distill it in a way that I understand. So one of the first lessons I always tell my students is, when you go in and talk to a boardroom, a senior executive, a director, whoever it is, don't talk about your model, don't talk about your analytics, don't even mention it, because they don't know what you're talking about, right? You know this stuff better than they do. They want to see a picture, they want to see a visualization, then you need to distill it down. So you're going from waterfall to little cup of water. That's a different kind of a job. And then you have what was BI probably for a long time, or just a decision-making strategy. So at UNH, what we've done then is just to give you a sense of how we approach analytics, and I think it's different. So there's a lot of folks rushing into this space right now. We took a good couple of years to find out what this was. Was it old wine in a new bottle? Was it something different? We came up with the idea it is something different. It's a combination of different things. Turns out we did a lot of it at the university, but we did it in silos. So we decided to pull those silos down and pull everybody together and say, if we're going to be responsive to industry, we have to not only understand what industry needs, but also do it ourselves, and we're trying to do that as well, and create this interdisciplinary program. And so that's what we have. We have a master's degree program and some certificates and a bachelor's program in Manchester. And they don't live anywhere. They sort of float around in the cloud. And we borrow faculty from all over the university. A couple of you are here. And they agree to participate because it's really cool and fun stuff to do, and that benefits the students. We have people from every college, every campus coming together to train our students around real problems. So they train actually on industry problems, so Unum Insurance, Liberty Mutual. We're looking at all kinds of projects. So we found what's interesting about these folks, though, in analytics is they're different folks. And brand doesn't always matter. The company you work for, Coca-Cola, it doesn't matter. It's that I work on cool projects and I'm intellectually engaged. This last one, we found that is really important for this group. So when we bring our folks into this major who want to become data scientists, this is the most important thing. It doesn't matter that you don't have Calculus 3. It helps, but it doesn't matter. If you're naturally curious, you're going to be really good in this field because you have to, we're about to enter what I call the age of questions. Because there's almost going to be no question we can't at least take a stab at pretty soon. It's really an exciting time. I mean, I go back to that first quote. It's the knowledge exposure that we're going to come into in the next 10 years is going to be massive. And I tell my university colleagues that, and some of them are uncomfortable with it because this is not how we were trained. Our students are doing more than I ever did on my dissertation. They do it in a week. They can run 1,000 predictive models in a week. I did 3 logistic regressions and got a PhD. I mean, oh my, right? So it's pretty amazing what they can do. So with that, we'll save questions at the end. So I just want to give you a sense of the scope of where we're at with data. And now Peter can tell you a little bit about how one company, at least Lonza, a very large company, is struggling to try to make some sense out of some of that data. So Peter, thank you.
I'm Peter Mueller. I work for Lonza Lonza, actually it's called Lonza PharmaBiotech. We got a new CEO, and like most new CEOs, they like to reorganize the business and reorganize labels and all that fun stuff that goes with it. How many people are familiar with Lonza and what we do? That big blue building that sits in Peas. That's just one little aspect of Lonza. I won't spend a whole lot of time on Lonza, but I think it helps to understand what Lonza is all about. Lonza is a global supplier to the life science industry. That's a mouthful. Lonza is really broken up. We're a Swiss-owned company. We're broken up into two global vertical business units, a product side of the business and a service side of the business. On the product side of the business, it's called life science ingredients, and it sounds just what it does. We manufacture ingredients that go into different types of products that are sold in the life science industry. Anywhere from vitamin supplements, everybody knows about Lysol. The ingredient that kills the germs in Lysol is manufactured by Lonza, along those lines. So that's the product side of the business. That's about 20% of Lonza's revenue globally. Then you have the service side of the business within Lonza. That is about 80% of the global revenue, and that is the more complex side of the Lonza business. We do clinical development work, so we provide that service to pharmaceutical companies. We get involved in some clinical development as it pertains to how are we going to take it from R&D into a commercialization process. So that's the service we provide to pharmaceutical companies. And then we have the big blue building that you see in Portsmouth is the custom manufacturing operation within Lonza. That is where we actually work with pharmaceutical companies to manufacture the active pharmaceutical ingredients that go into pharmaceuticals. The active pharmaceutical ingredient is what makes you better. So if you were to get an off-the-shelf medicine, you'll see passive ingredients, active ingredients. It's the active ingredient that is the thing that makes you healthy. So in the custom manufacturing organization with Lonza, they have 6 facilities worldwide that do nothing but manufacture active pharmaceutical ingredients for injectable pharmaceuticals. They're delivered to us in frozen format, a column of frozen cells. They're put into what are called bioreactors. If anybody's been to a brewery, you've been to what it looks like inside of a pharmaceutical manufacturing. You have these reactors. And it comes out in a sterilized active pharmaceutical ingredient that is then sent back to the pharmaceutical companies where they do the finished manufacturing work. So regardless to say that, with the entire side of that business, Lonza generates data in every single nook and cranny of the business, all the way down from the manufacturing equipments and the sensors that are manufacturing temperatures and pressures in the reactors, all the way up to global ERP applications. In our case, it's SAP. There's not a component function division site within Lonza that does not generate data in some way, shape, or form. We have sensor data on our equipment all the way up to laboratory information management systems, commercial systems. We have sales systems. We have financial systems. We have accounting systems. We have HR systems. We have data about everything that goes on within Lonza. Every process that goes on within Lonza collects some sort of data. The issue that we had, and one of the reasons when Lonza approached me, is this is how it was put to me in the interview when they were talking to me. They're like, we are so heavily rich in data, but we are absolutely arid in information. We collect data, tons of it. We have no idea what to do with it. We have no idea what it really means. Help us. We have an IT organization that gives us these wonderful systems that can collect this vast amount of data, but there's no way to get out of it without an act of God. And the IT organization says, we've given you queries. You can save the results of the data into an Excel spreadsheet. What's your problem? And it's funny, when we talk about that, and I looked at the IT organization and I said, it's a common trap that most fall into because there are pressures. You've got this global IT system you're putting in place. All of a sudden you're behind schedule. Now you're over budget. And what's the first thing you start doing? You start jettisoning requirements. Well, they don't need that feature. They don't need that functionality. Next thing you know, the first things to go are getting the data out of the systems. Why? Because that requires working a lot more with the business to say, what do you want us to do with the data once we collect it? And so you get that gap that develops within the majority of businesses out there. So what Lonza asked me, they said, can you come in? I work in operations. I don't work in IT. I probably should have mentioned that to begin with. Can you not only help us find better ways to use our data, but can you build a relationship with the global IT organization to make them understand that we still need their help? They are what we call the custodians of the data. They are responsible for making sure that it's collected, that it's secure, that it's maintained and it's available 24/7, 365, because the majority of Lonza's sites are 24/7, 365 facilities. There's rarely any 8 to 5 facilities in Lonza. So we're collecting data constantly, nonstop, well on this way. So what they asked me to do is, how can you do that? And I said, well, it's not that really big of a deal. You have to take a step back. There's a lot of buzzwords out there. You know, you got big data, you got the Internet of Things. Now we're talking about analytics of things. We have software as a service, we have platform as a service. Now we have analytics as a service. What does all this really mean? So the approach that we took with the program was, we're going to create a service organization within Lonza, a center of excellence that basically says, we're not going to develop the reports for you. We're not going to do IT's job for you. We're going to bridge that gap, and we're going to find a way that basically tells the users, you are the people that own the process. You are the people that understand at what point in the process do you collect that data, and at what point in the process do you take that data and do something with it. The IT organization doesn't know that. You know it, but you don't have the ability to get that information over to IT and put it into a system. So how are we going to do that for you? So we really created what we call a global service organization. We are a shared service organization. And one of the things I came in and said, you have to understand that business intelligence is a very term that everybody uses, but if you truly understand business intelligence and you've been in the market long enough, it's the marketing side of things. It's those shopper club cards that you get and those things that basically says, you know, here, get this and we'll give you a discount on this and we'll send you circulars. They're profiling you. That's what business intelligence is really all about. We didn't want to get rid of that aspect of what Lonza does with the data, but we didn't want to make it the overall umbrella. So we said, you have to take a step back, and what you're really looking to do is to analyze the business. You want business analytics. You want to be able to make decisions. You want insight into what's going on. You want information about what happened, what will happen, why did it happen, all those things that you can't answer because these systems don't tell you. So basically what we said is we created an organization. We broke it into 3 areas. We still have the business intelligence side of things, but we also have what we call the bioinformatics side of things, because we do a lot of scientific analytics with our data. I mean, we are manufacturing pharmaceutical drugs, so there's a lot of data that you have to analyze. And then we have the operational intelligence side of things that basically says, what's going on in the business? Can you tell me what's going on in the business? Can you prove to me what's going on in the business? So it was very much kind of a tough task, given Lonza is a huge organization. It's a multinational organization. It's got different cultures, different mindsets. It bought its way into certain lines of businesses, so you inherit that culture that comes into it as well. So one of the things that we talked about was really breaking it into a very simple structure, and I can get into some slides here, but the first thing that we did was reach out to the IT organization. We basically said, we can do nothing as a business analytics global program without data. You guys are responsible for collecting the data. We understand that there's some animosity between the business and the IT organization, but we're here to bridge that gap. We're here to help you guys out. We are here to make sure that those requirements that you say you cannot get out of the business, we will get those requirements for you. Those design specifications over what data that they need and what reports that they need, we'll get that for you. We'll build it for you, we'll document it for you, and at some point we'll hand you those design specifications and you can now build it into the systems of record. They should be going in to the system, if all possible, to get the information out of the system that collects the data. We have got to get away from Excel files. As I like to say, can you follow the Excel file? You run the query, you make the changes, you pass it on to an email to this person, they add data. And, you know, it comes back to what people like to call, what's the single version of the truth? That's a big buzz term that's out there. Can you tell me, is this data accurate? So they talked about the big 3 V's, variety, velocity, and volume. Industry presentation, again, we're missing 2 V's, validity and verifiability. It's very easy to collect data, and now it's very inexpensive to store data. 10 years ago, you couldn't store that amount of data without spending capital. Now you can store that amount of data by going to Staples and getting a thumb drive. So it has really gone very, very far. So that was the first thing I said. You have to understand that there's other aspects of data, just not variety, volume, and velocity. I said the second thing, and I presented this in industry about 4 years ago, and I got booed in a couple times, and I was told I didn't know what I was talking about. How many people heard that data is your most valuable asset? You hear that a lot? You read that a lot? I said it's not an asset. It's a raw material. It's a raw material that goes into the production of information and insight. And like any raw material, and any supplier of the raw material, you need to focus on quality. And I can tell you right now, in the business analytics program, when we start pulling data out of the systems, you sit there and scratch your head and say, how the heck did that get in there? This is supposed to be a date field. Why am I seeing customer numbers in a date field? You know, this is supposed to be information about a sensor. Why am I seeing information on a label? You know, what's going on? So like anything else, the old garbage in, garbage out, if you cannot focus on that and get into the mindset that data is not an asset, but a raw material, a very valuable raw material, that if used correctly, or what we say is collected correctly, provisioned correctly, and consumed correctly, you can have pretty high confidence in whatever analytics you're generating are going to be accurate, relevant, and timely. And that was a big, big step for Lonza and the IT organization to basically understand that, I guess it is a raw material. It really, really is. And if you don't have that quality of data in there, it's like I said, it's a big elephant in the room that nobody wants to talk about. It's like, what's your analytics strategy? What's your big data strategy? I'm like, you can have those, but the question you should be asking is, what's your data governance strategy and what's your data management strategy that sits under that? And how are you going to get ownership of the data into the people that actually collect it and the people that actually consume it? Because they know what it means and they know what they need to do with it. And it was a very, very hard sell to begin with. It took about 1.5 years to build a relationship with the global IT organization and the business to basically say, IT, can you accept the fact and the role that for now we're asking you to be nothing more than data custodians? Can you make sure that you're collecting the data correctly? The BA program will take it from there, and we'll take all the other aspects of analytics and reporting. And then they said, okay, we're fine with that. And unfortunately, we had a very good CIO that was very open-minded to what we were trying to do. He came out of the business. He wasn't a true IT person, so he understood. He also had a quality background. He understood. And he basically went to the IT organization and says, you will give the BA program access to the data, because they would not give us access to the data, because it's not your data. Any IT people here? The last presentation I gave at Gartner back in almost a year ago, I stood up and I said, the biggest issue that IT people really have is the data that they collect. It's not their data. It belongs to the business. It's the business's data. You are nothing more than custodians of that data. And it's very hard for some people to understand that that's really the fact. If you were to ask an IT individual, what does that financial data mean? They're like, I don't know. What does that sensor data mean coming off that piece of manufacturing equipment? I don't know. It's ones and zeros. I don't know what it really means. So if they don't understand what the data means and how are they going to generate analytics and reports for you? How are they going to generate the insight and information? And if they're capable of doing that, how can they assure that it's accurate? And when you're in a pharmaceutical business and you're making decisions around whether or not to release a drug, you want to be pretty confident that the data that's sitting in front of you and sitting in front of the regulatory agencies says, yeah, that's accurate, that's relevant, it's timely. We have control over that data. And you know, it's a very, very big issue to get over. And you know, it's so easy to collect data now, and it's so easy, and there's a lot of bad habits that you have to break. I sit there and say, I called Lonza the kingdom of Excel. There are spreadsheets all over the place. And I'm on record of saying this, and everything I said I've been vetted, so I won't get in trouble with legal. But it's really that. It's become a crutch. But at the same time, you can't take the spreadsheet away from people. You can't take the queries away from people. So somebody asked, well, how are you going to do that? And this is where the other side of the BA program came in. How many people have heard of self-service business analytics? The self-service consumer, citizen integrator, all those buzz terms that are out there. So the question is, okay, I can't rip away an Excel file and say, you're just going to have to wait for me to build a report for you or my team to build a report for you. I know you got to make that decision tomorrow, but you're going to have to wait a few weeks before we can build that for you. So it's that side. Now, okay, we have the IT organization on our side. Now, how do we get the business on our side? How do we get them to realize that we can improve what we call our #1 soft metric within the BA program? Can we improve the quality of life of the individual that has to generate a report to make a decision? They're the ones that are getting pressure. Where's my report? Where's my decision? What do I need? I need these numbers. So how do we now take care of that side of the business? And that's where the whole mindset of a shared service organization comes into play. We have the data consumers, who are the business. We have the data collectors, the IT organizations. The BA program became the providers of data and the provider of information and the providers of insight. So we will not only work with you to design what we call static reports that don't change that much. We will work with you, we'll build those, and we'll work with the IT organization to get those built in at some point into the systems. We also take a look at those reports that change a lot, not so much in context, but in what we call content. A financial report for this week might have this bit of information in it or this content in it, and 2 months down the road, it's the same report, same visuals, but different data, different content within there. So we can help you guys with those. But at the same time, we also want the users to not only be able to do their job, but at the same time do the research, do the design and development work that we're doing. So by giving them the ability to go in what we call analytical sandboxes, where we'll put relevant data into, we'll say finance in Portsmouth. We'll create an analytical sandbox for you that contains financial data. You can go in there and visually walk through the data. You can discover the data. You can take a look at everything that's going on with that data. You can go, if in Excel if you want to, you can generate reports and metrics, and then give us those visuals and give us those data sets. Then we can build that for you, or we can have the IT organization build it for you. If you can believe that if you can have a central organization that can generate analytics for a business, it's a winless battle. It's a matter of basically what we're saying is, where you can, let the data consumers do the design and development work for you. At the same time, make sure the IT organization is there collecting the data for you. It's a very, very necessity to do. And it wasn't very easy. I'm in 4.5 years now at Lonza. We're finally to the point where we're getting there. But it's a challenge. And so we're working on that one. I have a quick slide here that I wanted to show you if I can remember that. But I don't want to present too much time because I really kind of want you guys to start firing questions at me. And what we're trying to do, because I could spend hours talking about everything that's going on in Lonza as it pertains to how we use data. But in essence, what we did is, well, here's something. This didn't sit well when I gave this to the senior leadership. How many people are familiar with Lean Six Sigma, total quality management? 8 areas of waste. Take me a second here. I don't know if you can see that or not, but we identified 8 areas of data waste within Lonza. Culture, unwillingness to change. Don't take my Excel spreadsheet away from me. My queries just fine. IT, we don't have to build reports. The users, we gave them queries. They don't need anything. Uncertainty as the data quality. Very, very big. No document data definitions. Again, you see that where that bar is. Open source, file locking issues. Big problem there. Just as today, there was an email flying around. Can somebody please unlock this Excel file that's been locked for 2 days? We need to generate a report. We can't get to the data because it's locked. That went out to the entire facility. No intended use defined, what we call the master data. What purpose does that data serve within that given process that collects it and consumes it? Referential data integrity issues. Oh my God. How many people see, look at their system, who knows what third normal form is? Normalized data? How many companies really think that they're at a third normal form in their databases? Not happening. Determining the proper location of the data. That's what I talked about, pass the Excel file around. Or my favorite, put it out into a shared drive and let everybody in the sun go in there and take changes to it. And then obviously resolving the data management issues. You can see that was the worst. And it goes back to that validity and verifiability of the data. And the fact that data really is a raw material and goes into everything that we do. You can't make a decision if you don't have confidence in the data. As one person put over my door one day when I came in, I still haven't found who it is. And God we trust, everybody else show Peter the data. And they also think that for some reason I hate Excel files. I don't, but I just don't like the misuse of the Excel files. And then just quickly, there's other slides I could talk to. I want to get in. This is a good one. I think I should get you up there. When I first came in here, we broke it into quadrants. Less than 1 year experience, 1 to 2 years experience, 3 to 5 years experience, greater than 5 year experience. Everybody was ad hoc as it pertains to understanding how to use the data, and if it came to managing the data, they weren't any better. And that was done with, believe it or not, with a survey that we developed and put out. This is where we're shooting toward now, is to take the inexperienced ones and let them learn, and then move them over, the people 1 to 2 years, 3 to 5, and then greater than 5, with the Business Analytics Center being in the middle. Why did we do it that way? The people with the longer experience, they understand the business processes better, they understand what data is collected, and they understand what it's used for and what it means. So if we're going to do that, we're going to make these people the more senior level to focus on the quality of the information and the insight that's being generated within Lonza. If you only have a year experience on a business process, you may understand how to collect the data, you may understand how to use it somewhat, but do you really understand the role that that data plays within the process? You can take a machine operator in manufacturing, they're going to look at sensor data. They go, well, yeah, okay, the pressure's right, but what does that really mean? You give that to an engineer, a manufacturing engineer that's been fired, you can take a look at the data and say, we have a problem. We're starting to get on the close to being on one of our control limits. And that's the difference. It is really, really pivotal. And that all goes back to data ownership. And this is the BA program, which I talked about. This is how we started out. Really taking a look at building the program model, the service model. Then I staffed and trained the organization. Then, like anything else, showed senior leadership, well, we're spending money on you. We're spending money on your tools. Show me that's going to work. So we started with the proof of concept. I came in and said, I'm not going to guarantee you're going to have reports at your fingertips my first year here. You're going to have to give me 5 years to do what we need to do. Then, what I talked about earlier, in 2013, I focused on building that relationship between IT and operations. We call it OT-IT, Operations Technology, Information Technology, because IT doesn't manufacture or maintain our manufacturing systems. Operations does that. And then expanding the Center of Excellence, which we did this year, or last year, and started introducing self-service business analytics. So this is the roadmap that we put together for the BA program. And we're almost there. We're a little bit behind schedule, but for the most part, we're there. And I think that's about it. And I won't go through the Venn diagrams, but basically the way I had the program arranged into, I have 3 primary roles within the program. The systems architect, they're responsible for all things moving data around, all things data integration. We call them the FedEx of data. They pick, pack, and ship it. They pick it from its source, they package it in the right way, and they ship it to the data consumer. We have the data architect who then takes that data and actually turns it into something. You call them data scientists, statisticians, we call them data architects. They actually turn that raw data into information and insight. And then obviously, the business analysts. They're the ones who go out and work with the customers. Then they're also the ones that go to the IT organization and say, this is what we built, can you replicate it now in the system of record? They are the voice of the customer, is their primary response. And obviously we gave them a set of tools. We have a primary global data integration tool. We had one right now, but with IT we're wrestling over what analytical platform we want to go with. But right now we're on the Microsoft platform. I'm not happy about that one, but it does what we need to do for it right now. And obviously we have a business process modeling tool. Our business analysts must be able to work and understand the business and be able to visually model out the process. And after modeling and visually modeling out that process, at what point is that data collected and how is it collected and at what point in that process is it consumed? We don't understand the business that well, nor do we have the time to understand the business that well, but the business analysts need to do that. They're the primary for us. I won't go through all that. And I really want to just get to the point where you can start asking me questions. If you never notice, I'm a big fan of the Venn diagram. I get a lot of teasing for that too. Yes?
I mean, you have a huge job to take, as you described, data to information.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that seems like an enormous task.
Mm-hmm.
But then, of course, the information itself is not useful unless it's implemented.
Mm-hmm.
How do you ensure? I came from a manufacturing background, and it was awfully difficult to make sure that the people who would turn valves and do what they had to do to take the information to actually make a difference to the business.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got another leap to make from data to information to
Yes.
implementation. How do you ensure that it's actually driven through the organization to make a difference?
Yes, believe it or not, behind all the Venn diagrams, something like it, we actually have a process. We call it the solution framework process. We actually have a methodology that we go to. We call it people, method, process, and tools. I like to call it more method, people, methods, and tools, but there are processes involved. But we have a very robust process that does that. If you go in there flim-flammy and try to do it ad hoc, it's not going to do you any good. And that's where the cultural change comes into aspect. You actually have to ask people to spend some time with us and understand it and document it. It lays the foundation for it. The fundamental architecture of a report or an analytic is not that different. It's pretty much standard across the business. If you can develop a good, solid foundation on how you build analytics and how you build reports, you can pretty much manufacture any piece of information that you want, pretty reliability. Manufacturing is a little bit more because of the amount of data that's collected by the sensors. But the nice part about manufacturing equipment is there's no human involvement. It will perform the way it's designed to perform until something happens. So you have very much heavy reliability that that piece of equipment or that sensor is actually collecting the right data at the right time and in the right format. Don't really have to worry about validity and verifiability with data that's coming off of sensors and machines. It's pretty accurate along those lines. So we have high degree of confidence in that. So much so, everybody familiar with multivariate analysis? We actually have our statistical platform that literally is pulling data off of the sensors in real time. And there's monitors sitting in the manufacturing sciences and the technologies group, and they're sitting at their desktops looking at a manufacturing process in real time. And if they start seeing a spike toward the upper control limit or the lower control limit, they can pull that in from its cord and stop the process right there. Before we did that, we were blind to what was going on, and you get to the end, you do sampling, we had a corrupted or contaminated product, and you throw it out. And that, my friends, is $1 million to $3 million boo-boo. Pharmaceutical companies understand that happens, but they don't like it when you destroy their their very expensive raw materials that they give you. But yeah, it's a matter of doing that. Again, it's what we always say. It's making sure that you have the right business context and the right information content to go with that. But we're also getting to the point now where we're starting to predict through predictive analytics when the machine's going to fail. We're heavily regulated, so you have to do routine maintenance, routine cleaning, routine decontamination. But it gets very beneficial if you can start understanding when a piece of manufacturing equipment is going to fail before it fails. And a lot of manufacturing people say, well, we have a data historian that does that. We've got that sensor data, but you're not looking at it in real time. You're not predicting that machine's behavior. You're being very reactive. You're waiting for something to go wrong with that piece of equipment before you do something. We can be proactive now and tell you when we're pretty sure it's going to happen. So you can actually stop it. You can schedule a maintenance window.
You've laid out basically a sequential experience development process for your team. How do you train, other than calendar, how do you train as they move up the ladder?
But basically what we do, although it seems very sequential, believe it or not, it's very iterative in nature. We don't come in and say, we're going to give you predictive analytics right out of the gate, customer A. We start with the fundamentals. We're going to teach you the fundamentals of charting and grafting. Not to oversimplify it, but you'd be surprised the lack of fundamental understanding of charting and grafting. I've sat in a couple occasions in an executive meeting where they have pie charts up there that don't add up to 100. And you have executives saying, and I finally raised my hand, is anybody interested where the missing 12% is? And that's true. It's a true story. So how can you basically say there, how can you put that level of report in front of that audience when you know it's not accurate? And it's hard people for real to understand. I can make a pie chart. Excel does it for me. And it goes back to, is the data right? Is it in the right format? And did you collect it all? So we start out very simple. So before anybody becomes a self-service, getting to the point where we say you're now ready for self-service business analytics, you have to participate in the program. You have to spend time with the BA program. You have to go through our process. And the next time you come through, we're going to streamline it a little bit more. And the next time you come through, we're going to make it a little bit more agile, to the point where now that they have their analytical sandboxes, they understand the fundamentals of data management, they understand the fundamentals of charting and grafting and analytics. They can do the design and development work for us, and we know we can have a high degree of confidence that it's going to be accurate in what they want us to build. And each team member goes through that process at all the time. So.
Do you engage any third-party vendors to help you in this? Or have you developed your own tools to analyze the data, or do you use open source or proprietary tools?
Well, one, I'm not a big fan of open source, but that's a different thing. But we are a heavily regulated environment, and if you go in and an agency sees that you're using open source software, you're in trouble. That's why we don't use cloud applications. I'm sure that question will come out. We are not allowed to use cloud applications. Regulatory agencies do not like the fact that if you take your data and you pass it over to somebody else that's not you, and you don't have 100% control over that data, they question the integrity of that data. So they frown very heavily on that. But to answer your question, every tools that we have in the tool suite, it's all commercial off-the-shelf application. We have a wonderful, wonderful data integration tool. We call it a data appliance, a data integration appliance. Everybody familiar with service-oriented architecture? It's an SOA-based. We're a service organization. We have an SOA-based tool. It allows us to do simple data integration from a simple extract, transform, or load, or extract, load, transform, all the way up to enterprise service bus, all the way up to business process modeling, where my systems analyst can go in there and model out a process and identify at every point in that process what data is collected and what data is consumed. And we can build that process in using a standard notation called business process modeling into the data integration tool, and it will go and grab that data, transform that data, and load it into the analytical platform or wherever we tell it to load into. And yes, so we do have a centralized global data integration tool. It is the most pivotal thing in a business analytics program, is how do you go after the data? How do you make sure you're grabbing the right data? And how do you make sure that it's getting to the right destination in the right format? We profile data with the data integration tool. If we can sit down with the user and say, this is what the data should be, and this is what it means, we can check it. And if something wrong with it, we don't send it any farther. And then we can take that information, which we do, and we feed it back to the IT organization saying, you need to fix this on your system. The best point to control the quality of data is at the point of collection, not at the point of consumption. It's like anything, you control quality at the source. It's the best way to do it. And yes, we are looking at a global analytical platform.
Would you talk about your background and the background of the people in your organization and the potential career paths that they have?
Yes. My background, I graduated from the University of Dayton in Ohio. I graduated with a BS in Business Administration with a dual major. Management Information Systems, which is a lot of people call IT, but it's really not IT. Managerial Decision Sciences, and a minor in Computer Science Systems Analysis. The program was very ahead of its time. By making it a business degree and not a technical degree or a computer science degree, it was very heavy in the business. The MIS part of it told you how to analyze business processes and understand how they worked, and then how to take technology and automate those processes. The managerial decision science aspect of it says, okay, now that you understand the process and you're automating the process, how do you statistically measure that process? I was using that statistical process control charts back in the 1980s in college. That's how good the program was. And obviously with all the computer science programs you had to take, and database courses you had to take, you had a minor in computer science and systems analysis. So that's my background. I'm a very, if you will, highly educated systems analyst for the most part. For our people in my organization, it's really, the technology aspect of it is very, very important, but it's the mindset. Do you understand what we're trying to accomplish here? We're a service organization. We provide a unique service. You have a unique role within this program, not only as an individual contributor, but as a team player. Because it is a manufacturing process, and anybody knows anything, the person upstream from you, if they don't do their job, you suffer down, people downstream suffer. So I look at people with the technical background, the ability to understand business to a certain extent. Obviously with the business analyst it's more. I look for the ability of communication skills. I look at the ability to do what I call coordination. Can you manage yourself and can you manage your aspects within the team? And the most important aspect, how good are you at collaboration? Can you work as part of a team? It is we're a service organization, it's very team-centric. I call it the three-legged stool. We have three primary roles and responsibilities. If somebody's not doing their job, everything fails. The method that I talk about that we use, the methodology that we use, if any one individual is not doing their job, it fails. It doesn't fail partly, it fails totally. So with that mindset, and you're willing to understand and learn and develop and operate under that individual contributing team understanding and understand that we're a service organization, you can move up in the ranks.
I would say, too, when we started this program here at UNH, and we did ours basically 2 years of diligence to figure out what is this program going to look like. Mm-hmm. We went out and surveyed industry, and I would say that the industries that had moved further down the road, and Lonza being a good example of one, you heard that almost consistently. You know, we went in and said, what do you need from these folks? And I expected quantitative skills to be number one. It was number 4 all the time. Mm-hmm. It was ability to communicate, ability to work in teams, you know, all those kinds of interpersonal skills. And then came the quantitative, you know, and just being adept, you know, being able to understand how that all molds into the other. That's, for the companies that did it right, that was.
Yeah, I'm an IT person, so I can say, how many people really think their IT people are friendly? How many people get a correct answer out of their IT organization when you ask a question? That's very important. I mean, if you can't, what I'd say, put it, you know, the first question I ask everybody I interview, can you put yourself in the day in the life of somebody else's shoes? Even the IT organization, they're starting to learn. They're starting to realize that they can't operate in a vacuum. You know, and the CIO that we had, you know, gave him a little bit of tough love. I don't think we'd be where we are if it wasn't for him. You know, he's moved on. You know, and we have a new VP of IT. She's starting to learn. But what ended up happening is, if it wasn't for what we did with the OT-IT relationship, they would have never gotten the green light, the IT organization, to put together an enterprise architecture initiative. That basically IT now realizes that they have to have an architecture. They have to be able to integrate themselves into the business. They can't operate as a separate entity. They cannot operate as a profit center. They can't do any of that stuff. They realize that they too are a service organization to the business. And that's a huge leap. And I applaud our global IT organization for taking that leap. It's not an easy thing to do.
So one of the things from listening to the two of you that I'm really appreciating, it was interesting thinking about the types of data and how you might use it, thinking about business decisions, but I do appreciate how it becomes a common language opportunity throughout an enterprise, so that everybody, as you deal with high quality and meaningful data, it becomes information that is the core language that you can use between the leadership, engineers, your life scientists, all of those groups together. And so listening to the communication discussion then about how all those parties feed into it, have to have the ability to communicate with each other to get that common language established was interesting. But one question I had is there a tipping point when you are talking about these processes where one party might drive the development and the goal of data analytics? So perhaps in the beginning, the end users don't really know what to expect or what may be the potential. And so those who are forming the high quality data kind of drive it and say, did you know you could do this, or you can get this, or we can provide this? And then there becomes a tipping point where it becomes part of the corporate structure. So now the end users are driving the requests because they develop a new level of intelligence about the data?
Yeah.
Or does it exchange back and forth? Or I'm just kind of curious about how you bring that into an organization.
It is very tough. We have talked briefly to our HR organization about the concept of data ownership. Again, it goes back to we said, within each function within a Lonza facility, there's got to be one individual that's got that greater than 5 years experience that really truly understands the process of that function. That we can teach them the fundamentals of data management. We can teach them the fundamentals of data analytics and reporting. And we can give them the skill sets that they need to not only do it themselves, but to train their organization. And what we said to HR, it's not another job title. It's not another new role within the program. We're just asking somebody to take on some additional responsibilities. I have a slide in there that'll probably be better to answer to it. But what we're trying to do with the data ownership concept is create collaborative forums. So a finance person in Portsmouth can talk to a finance person in Switzerland that's talking to a finance person in Houston. All of them probably have the similar types of reports and data. They can collaborate together and says, can we start defining the data from the point of collection and the point of consumption and what we really need to do with it? Because it kind of goes back to, if without high quality data and the right data, everything else that we try to do it doesn't gain you much value. You can deliver it, you can give them the reports, but if you have low confidence in the accuracy of those reports, but they know it best. It's like Dr. Deming said, if you can't visually map out a process, you don't understand the process. And we don't have time to do that. The IT organization doesn't have time to do that. The people that are in the trenches need to do that. And they do it now, they don't realize it. As much as I pick on the Excel files and the spreadsheets, they're doing it, they just don't realize they're doing it. We just need to teach them a better way to do it.
Yeah, I sort of go back to, actually you said it too, when you go to that boardroom, and I think we've all probably, if anybody spent time in the industry there, if you were, I started as a data person it was then Health Source Insurance became Cigna, and you knew the data, and I would tell this to my early students, is if you know the data, you know the company. You understand what's going on. And then you would go into the boardroom, and it was clear, in I would say 90% of cases, they didn't know the data. And they didn't know the company. And that pie chart example, I think we've all sort of seen leaders, they're really making gut sort of decisions, or they're making it based on, whatever the TQM, synergy, whatever you name the sort of the flavor of the month tells you to do, but it's not data informed, right? So what I would tell my students, you want to learn the leadership skills that is going to rely on somebody who really knows the data of the business and do it that way, or do you want to be the person who knows the information of the business and grow to understand how to lead the company? And this was back probably in the early 90s, and I suggested to them at that time, those people one day are going to be the company. Because as we, and now as we got into global competitive marketplaces and everything goes into real time, as I was saying earlier to somebody, UPS found out that they can save millions of dollars a year by stopping, reducing idling by, a minute a truck. And that's a competitive advantage. So that's the world we're in right now. So. Yeah. That's where it comes from. And now those conversations are easier to have. But there were years where people would just sort of nod and smile. And in healthcare, they didn't have to because they weren't making money anyway. So ransom didn't matter.
A very brilliant man once said, data has no value and means nothing until a human being does something to it. That was Albert Einstein. It was just, it's true. It's literally just a value. It really doesn't mean it. What's a 1 mean to you? What does 25.2 mean to you? What does less than 15% mean? It doesn't really mean anything to you. Until you put it and you align, and this is what I preach all the time to the business and and to my team until they get tired of hearing it. It's that critical ability to marry together properly business content or contacts and information content. They have to be perfect. Because if you have the wrong content, even in the right business context, it doesn't mean anything to you. There's very little value. If you have the right information context, but you got a financial guy looking at an HR report, it doesn't mean anything to them. Along those lines, it's very important to be able to understand that concept.
You mentioned the phrases of big data, Internet of Things, and this kind of wave or trend that's happening. Are these things that were actually happening before, but now someone's put a wrapper around them?
Yeah, data's gotten cool. Data's gotten cool. It really has. I mean, technology's gotten cool. When I graduated college, you still had that geek label on you. It's like, oh God, here comes a computer science guy or an IT guy. But no, data and technology become very chic. And there's a lot of labels on it, and that's where you have to be very careful. You're going to get sales rep calling you all the time. Oh, we're the #1 in Internet of Things, or we're leading edge in big data. So Internet of Things. Look at its definition: cloud, device, mobile/social media, big data. What does that mean? The sales rep will tell you they understand it, but they don't. And it goes back to what does that mean to your company within the context of your business and your business process? How do you use devices? Do you use mobile? How do you collect big data? Do you use cloud applications? If so, how do you use them? And it goes back to that. You can have those strategies, but at the same time, you have to have a data governance and a data management strategy to go along with it. And if you start reading a lot of articles now, you're starting to see them, and they're basically saying the same thing. Yeah, it's that elephant in the room that nobody wants to talk about because it's a very difficult thing to implement. And you have to get everybody on board to do it, from the IT organization to the business and to the individual users. But you got to be very careful. There's a lot of cool terms and buzzwords out there. But when it comes down to it, data is that raw material that you need to generate your information and insight. And you have to have high confidence in that.
So follow up to Maria's question. I came from Environment, $120 million company, and each of the senior managers were required to understand Tableau.
Mm-hmm.
We use that as sort of a self-serve platform to understand the data. So that was sort of a migration within the company to be able to start to do that. Relatively easy, lighter tool than probably, I don't know what you guys use, but is a format to do that. And that started to drive the business from each of the pieces.
Yep. Tableau is very good. And the other thing that we introduced or at the end of this year, and we're going to try to push next year, is the idea of how do you visually construct something that somebody can look at it quickly and understand what the message it's trying to convey. And that's where things like Tableau are very good, because they teach you to visually design things. That's why the data integration tool that we use, it teaches my business analysts to visually model out a process. They don't sit there and talk to somebody and write it down. They're visually modeling it out. And it's like anything. If you draw it out and you use it, you have a good chance of retaining it a lot more quickly and understanding it a lot more quickly. And that's the whole idea of the analytical sandboxes and self-service analytics. Let them visually model it out. I can sit there and say, a box chart would be nice here. And they're like, well, what's a box chart? I've seen line charts that have 30, 40 lines on them. It's like it's a plate of spaghetti at that point. It's like, what does it really mean? But again, they use the tools at hand and they understand the knowledge that they do, but sometimes the tools can lead you down a very bad path. You have to be able to understand the intended use of the data and then find a tool that will help you realize the intended use of that data. It's like I say, it's like giving a yardstick to a tailor. Useful if he's measuring his shop, but very inefficient if he's trying to make a suit for you, because the yardstick doesn't bend.
We did a survey once. It was really actually interesting. When we asked a bunch of senior data people. These are people who use data both in state government and industry. How do you know if something's quality data? They said, because I have access to it. Because it's there. Especially with the internet, because it's online, they would say.
My lead statistician has a file he calls stupid statistics that he's seen over his years. I said, Jim, that's nice, but don't really keep that kind of to yourself. I understand what you're trying to get at, but that's not calling somebody stupid or calling their statistics stupid is not the way to go. But but you see things, but it's like anything else. The tools are available. You just need to be able to integrate them into what you do. Define your methods and your process first before you pick out a tool. Do not try to design your analytical processes around a tool. You will fail.
I think this is probably a good stopping point, but I can tell there are more questions. So don't stop the questions, just migrate them to the table. And if you could join me in thanking our speakers for just an absolutely fantastic seminar.